Hello everybody, I'm just plain nuts, and today we are here at Wisley Airfield. Now, it may not look like it at the moment, but I promise you it will soon enough in this video. So what we're going to be going over in this video is, what I'm going to be doing is telling you the history of this place and showing you what is left of what was once a very, very active place. So first of all, I just want to say I really hope you enjoy this video. For anyone out there who has either worked or knows anything about this place, please leave a comment or get in touch. I have an Instagram, Facebook page, just plain nuts, and it would be really good to hear from you guys. And maybe we can come back up here and make a V2 video or an updated video. But for now, I just want to say, please enjoy the video and let's go and explore Wisley Airfield. I know what you guys must be thinking. This doesn't look remotely like an airfield. Well, it's part of Wisley Airfield, and this is the gate from where the workers would have come in to do whatever they had to do throughout the day. And just to show you something which I really like is this sign. That has probably been here for, well, it's probably since the airfield opened. And behind me here is what I can only imagine was a security hut. But let's go have a look inside, because the one thing I do want to show you guys is the last time I was up here, my voice may get a bit echoey, was it's still got all the original fittings in it, including these. I love this. These vintage electrical switches. I absolutely love that. That could be, I mean, these could be here from maybe the 50s or the 40s. But it's all still there. I'm not going to touch it because, quite frankly, I don't fancy an electric shock. But the lights are still here. It's all the original trimmings. All the original stuff is still here. Then I'll say that makes me laugh. There's like a spare key thing here, which I can't imagine you would need nowadays. But so. Yeah, I can only imagine this was a security hut as we come out to these, what would have been a massive doorway. So, I don't know if that was a security hut or whether, if I get it back in view, I don't know whether it was a security hut or maybe that's where they just manage the electricity. But one thing I have seen as well is maybe the workers came in this way, because you can see there's a little bit of pavement there. And there's a little bit of pavement there, and this road goes all the way down there. So maybe this is where the workers came in and then just went to their offices or went to work in the hangars or whatever tasks they had to do. I can imagine that's where they came in. So just to give you sort of refresh of what we're going to be doing in this video. So we're going to be walking around Wisley Airfield. The video, we're starting off small, as I said, we're starting off with the security hut. You've seen a road, you've seen the old security hut, but what we're going to do is we're going to have a walk around, and I promise the exciting stuff starts soon, because we're going to walk down a little bit and I'm going to show you various parts of the airfield. So just bear with me, this video will get exciting, but to give you a refresh, what we're going to be doing is walking around Wisley Airfield, and we're going to be having a look at, I'm going to be telling you guys what was there, showing you what is left, and also as well, if you do hear the sound of aircraft, it's because we are very, very close to Heathrow Airport. So what I'm going to say is that, as I said, we're going to walk around, have a little look around, tell the history of this place, tell you what was there and what is left of this very short-lived airfield. Start building the excitement. Behind me, as you can see, is this massive mass of concrete. Now I'm going to give you a clearer view so you don't see my face in this. but this is Wisley's compass point. Now, from what I've read, because I did some more research before coming here, a compass point, anyone who works at an airfield or just knows aviation in general, that will know that most airfields do have, like somewhere like Heathrow, I think, has them as well. A compass point is where I think they would have calibrated certain stuff in the cockpit of the aircraft. So basically what would happen is, I don't think it's that black ring, but a tug would bring an aircraft down and would then tow it around this mass of concrete here, and essentially they would then calibrate various instruments in the cockpit. I think they must have done that like after maintenance or something along those lines. But also here as well is this little building here. Now this is, I think, I think it is either a VOR or AOR. I don't know what, I should have researched that really, but that was for Wisley. That is probably the only part of the airfield that has remained active since the airfield closed like 50 years ago. But it's still in use today, and I think it's used for Oakham Airfield. Someone correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But yeah, so this compass point is literally right on the end of the runway, and that is what we're going to have a look at next. Stay tuned, guys. Guys, this is where the excitement really begins to build, because as you can see behind me is the runway here at Wisley. Wisley only has one runway, but also behind me you can see is another mass of concrete. Now what was this for? Now Wisley only had one runway and it's still here. But I don't know if you can see from here. So if I zoom in on this bush, you can see that the edge of the runway is there, and then the concrete sort of goes out a little bit, and it goes in a circle. And it's just a shame that that's there really, because you could actually get a full picture of it. But you get the idea of how big this is, and the compass point is just over there. So is the security box. So this massive concrete, now to give you one of the aircraft that flew from here is the VC-10, and the VC-10 was the biggest aircraft to take off and land from here, and Wisley's runways is, at the moment we are at the 2A end, and all the way down there is runway 10, is the other end of the runway, runway 10. If you were landing from that way, you would come down here, and if you need, and the hangars were up there as well, and parking spots. There were no parking spots down this way, so you literally had to come back down. You had to come all the way to the end of runway 2A, turn around in this massive concrete here, and then backtrack down runway 2A, back to the hangars, back to your parking spots. Now, what I find amazing, if I'm going to turn the camera back around, is the runway markings are still here. This place has been closed for 50 years. There's the 2, and just over there is the 8. This place has been closed for 50 years, and we are going to be walking down the runway, so you will see various other runway markings. And there's the VOR or AOR or whatever it's called. I should have really looked that up before coming here. We're gonna have a walk down the runway, and whilst we're walking down, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna walk down a little bit, and I want to try and find a central white line to show you guys, and then, as I said, we're going to start telling the story, and we're going to begin when it opened. So join me in a second. So we have begun our walk from the end of runway 2A, and there's another runway marking there. That's the centre line of Wisley Airfield's runway. So now that we've made it here, now that we're at the runway, we stand in the middle. You can see as well, like all the white patches as well, where the top surface, like some of it is still black from where some of the concrete was, where the top layer has sort of been eroded away by the elements that it's exposed, sort of like the underneath of the runway. But this is where we start to tell the story of Wisley Airfield, and for that we need to go back in time. So it is 2024, ladies and gentlemen, but we're going to go back to 1942, and this is where the story of Wisley Airfield begins. Now, 20 minutes down the road from this once airfield is what is now known as the Brooklands Museum, or as many of you former aviation engineers or people who worked in the aviation industry, will know that place used to be called Weybridge when it was a manufacturing facility. During the Second World War, Brooklands was producing, or Weybridge, I'm going to call it with Weybridge. Weybridge was a manufacturing facility for many aircraft, one of which was the Wellington bomber. That will have a factor just in a minute, just bear with me. So we start in 1942 with a man who was a Vickers test pilot by the name of Joseph Summers. Joseph Summers, one day in 1942, was on a test flight. I can't find what he was flying on the internet, but he was flying, he was conducting a test flight. As I said, he was a Vickers test pilot. He had an engine failure on his aircraft and had to make an emergency landing. And where did he make his emergency landing? In what was a field. This is, if we take the runway, that is what Wisley was like before it became what it became. So he crash landed here in what was a field, and he thought to himself that it would make a suitable airfield. Now, back in the Second World War, that is what most of the airfields of the Royal Air Force and aircraft manufacturers were. They were essentially just a field, really, with some runway markings. And he thought that this place would make a suitable airfield. Now, it was 1942, it was World War II, and really, you needed sort of all the airfields that you can get. And he reported back to higher-ups in Vickers and said, hey, there's the field that I've crash landed in, I think that it would make a really good airfield. And so the higher-ups came from Vickers and they surveyed the site and said, yes, we think so too. So hangars were built and Wisley Airfield was born, and it was born in 1942. But from what I've read, flying didn't actually begin here until 1944. So what was Wisley used for during those dark days of World War II? Well, it became a Vickers test. It was a Vickers test facility, but during the Second World War, it was used as a dispersal for brand new Wellington bombers. So they were built at Weybridge, and then they were flown here to Wisley, where, as I said, it was a dispersal airfield. Now, a dispersal airfield is basically from what I've read, is what would have happened is the crews from whatever squadron was going to be having that particular aircraft would come to Wisley, and they would pick up their aircraft, and then they would fly that aircraft to wherever they were based. So that was the start of Wisley Airfield as a dispersal airfield for Vickers during World War II. And there is more runway markings there, so we are walking dead centre of Wisley's runway, and that's what it was used for during World War II. When World War II ended in 1945, Wisley wasn't one of those airfields that was closed down and just turned back into agriculture. It was maintained by Vickers, and it became a test facility for various Vickers aircraft throughout its history. And that is where things start to get a bit more interesting, because this runway that I'm walking on right now, this has been here since 1952. So 10 years, on Wisley's 10th anniversary, this concrete runway was laid to bare. And why? Because 1952 was the birth of the V-bombers. This stretch of runway, I don't know which end it took off from, but this is where the Vickers Valiant made its first flight. Now, anyone who follows me on Facebook or Instagram will know anything to do with the V-bombers, I'm all for it. So it is absolutely amazing to know that I am walking where the Valiant took its first flight. This is the birthplace of the V-bombers. The Valiant made its first flight, I think it was March 1952. And then the Vulcan flew in August of 52. And then the Victor literally flew on the Christmas Eve of 52. So, yes, this is the birthplace of the V-bombers. And as I said, it's absolutely incredible to think that the Valiant was roaring down the runway. And not just the Valiant, but loads of Valiants. You know, all the Valiants that I think were built here at Wisley. I have to add as well that the Valiant, as I said, the Valiant made its first flight from here. So anything V-bombers, I'm all for it. So I think that's what mainly draws me to this place. But, well, actually no, but I'll get to that later on towards probably the end of the video. So, not only did the Vickers Valiant make its first flight from here, but also the ill-fated Valiant B Mark II. So the Valiant Mark II was essentially the same as the Victor B2 and the Vulcan B2. It was just essentially a bigger version of the original. And it was built here at Wisley, and it flew here from Wisley. And I'm literally looking down towards runway 10, and all I'm thinking is, and all I'm seeing is this black aircraft just roaring down the runway and then suddenly lifting off. It's absolutely incredible to even imagine it here at this historic airfield. Just to imagine such an event, and maybe even hearing, you know, some of the old engines that used to be started up, take off, land here. It's just an incredible feeling. Absolutely amazing. As well, this was Vickers' own airfield. This was their airfield for testing various aircraft that they manufactured during their existence. And I say, it's still absolutely fascinating to feel and to know that the Valiant made its first flight from here. And as I said, the B Mark II as well. But as I said in the previous clip, that the B Mark II was ill-fated. But it wasn't just the B Mark II, it was the original Valiant as well that ended up being doomed. So, to give you an insight into that, so as I said, the B Mark II of the Valiant was essentially just like the Vulcan B Mark II. It was a bigger version of the original aircraft. So, carried more payload, had more range, you know, it was just all-round and improved aircraft. So why was it ill-fated? Well, because of something called the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, during this time, Gary Powers in his U-2 spy plane was shot down over the Soviet Union. And during that period, it was believed that bomber crews would be safe at altitudes of 60,000 feet and above. Reason being, because they believed at the time that the Russians had no sort of jet fights, had no fighters or surface-to-air missiles that could reach the heights that these bombers operated at. So they believed they were safe. But once Gary Powers was shot down, that became untrue. So what happened after that? Well, the V-bombers their roles changed. They weren't immediately withdrawn as nuclear bombers, but essentially what happened was that instead of going in at altitudes of 60,000 feet, they had to go in low level. Treetop height, 250 feet was the minimum. And obviously, low flying causes a lot of stress on an airframe, and it was stress that the Valiant was not designed for. The Vulcan coped fine. The Victor, not so much. The Valiant didn't. They found cracks in the wing spar because of all the stress of low-level flying. Some Valiants were converted into tankers. Some Valiants were painted into the camo top, white belly scheme that the V-bombers had during probably the majority of their career. But it was that role, that low-level role, that eventually retired the Valiant and doomed it to an early retirement. The Valiant was retired in 1965 because it couldn't cope with the stresses of low level. And interesting fact, whilst we're here at its birthplace, there is only one complete airframe in existence, and that is X-Ray Delta 818, which is on display at the Royal Air Force Museum at Cosford. There you go, guys. So that is the top level. So that's the surface of the runway. So that is what the aircraft that were being flown from here would have landed on that surface right there. As you can see, it's all been sort of eroded away as the decades have passed. But that is a very good. It's quite a big patch actually of the runway. What we got flying over that is an A320 by the looks of it. I do want to add as well that we are close to Heathrow, and that is going to have a part in the video later on, so stay tuned. Okay, so now we have reached another point. So we have walked all the way from the end of runway 28, and here is one of the taxiways. Now there's really only two taxiways here at Wisley, and this is one of them. So that tree line over there, see there's building equipment, so there, that is where we are heading. That is where two hangars used to be. So this taxiway here, we're going to walk down. I'm going to keep the camera on the taxiway. So this is where all the aircraft, you can see it's quite wide, but this is where all of the aircrafts that were based or flown here at Wisley would have taxied up from the hangars that were just literally down there. Now this bit of taxiway is fascinating because, as I said, you know, I've been up here quite a few times. This is the fifth time I've been up here, and I absolutely love this place, absolutely adore it. But this taxiway also has extra bits as well that are quite fascinating as well. So I thought that they were office spaces at first, these next spots that I'm going to show, but it turns out actually they're for something completely different. And whilst we're here as well, so this is the holding point. Now at airports, this seems to be white, which is odd. I'm sure at most airports they're actually yellow, but anyway, this is the holding point for the aircraft. So they would have held here before taxiing onto the runway, and they would have either gone up there to runway 10, and the end of the runway is literally behind that mound of earth there, or they would have just gone, backtracked to 8 again, turned around, and off they would have gone. I love this place because when you're here, I am going to say this, I was hoping to sort of save this until the end of the video, but I'm going to say it now. I find old airfields like this absolutely fascinating, and the reason why is because as I said, like, VC-10s used to fly from here, and we all know that as avgeeks, VC-10s were not the quietest of airliners in the world. They're not exactly a 787 Dreamliner. And it's just knowing that those kind of aircraft flew from here you know, and it wasn't just VC-10s either. As I said, Vickers had this as their own personal test facility. And it wasn't just VC-10s. I mean, the VC-10 didn't come along until, I think it was 1960s, I think it was. But there was so much more going on. Like, Vickers built the world's first turboprop, the Vickers Viscount, and even they flew from here. And it's just knowing that the runway that you see and this taxiway, they were all here. They all came up this way. They all took off from that runway. And that's what I find so not just eerie but fascinating about old airfields, is that they were a hive of activity, so much noise, and now silent, absolutely silent. It's just absolutely fascinating. Well, we are going to walk down a little bit because there is a couple of things that I do want to show you whilst we are here on this taxiway. So guys, going back to what I was saying about on my way back from Duxford, so that gate there is where I walked through, and I literally ended up on the runway, and I was just so in awe of it all. But here is what I was looking for. You can just about make out under all the undergrowth is concrete, and there is, if we walk down a little bit, just behind this bush here is another slab of concrete, and what they were used for is ground tests. So anyone who works in the aviation industry knows that just before an aircraft's first flight, or if you've had, like, I don't know, an engine change or something, you know that they do ground runs before they take an aircraft for its first flight. And this slab of concrete here is one of them, and there is another one, literally, if I turn the camera around, here. So these spots, if I can stop moving the camera around, these little spots here is where aircraft would have been backed up, and they would have had their engines tested here. And it is massive, this little slab of concrete. It's absolutely huge. And I'm just seeing now, like, if taking away all the undergrowth, I'm just seeing like a VC-10 or something being tested here, having its engines at full whack. Absolutely amazing. I just unbelievable, this place. Absolutely love it. That it's just so much noise was here and it's fallen silent. So walking down the taxiway a bit more, and these yellow markings are here. Now this is what signifies the centre line of the taxiway. So yeah, as I said, you know, the aircraft would have taxied down from here. I don't know if you can see it from the camera, but you probably will be able to see it a bit more once we get behind that mound of earth there. But you can see that this is the centre line of the taxiway. If I zoom out, that's the centre line. So the aircraft would have taxied up from the hangars that were in the two hangars that were in that space there, and would have taxied up here and gone to the runway, which is now out there. And I think you might be able to see it from here, but you can see that it's sloped, that the aircraft would have come up from the hangars rather than just from the hangars, and just taxi up to the runway and take off. I find that very sort of unique to Wisley. I don't know if any other airfields have featured that before, but it's just I've never seen it before in an airfield where the aircraft taxi up a taxiway, like, well, you know what I mean, like an uphill taxiway rather than just a smooth taxiway. But I guess that's just the geography of the place. There's also these yellow markings here. I don't know what they must have been. I don't know what they must have been for. If anyone could tell me what these particular markings were for, it'd be greatly appreciated. Right, okay, so here we are. This, I'm going to stand up here just for a minute, but this is where the hangars were. So it's a shame, actually, if we put me back into the frame, it's a shame that this is all here, because before you used to literally be able to literally drive onto this place. There, the A3 is over there somewhere, and you used to be able to just turn left off of the A3 and come in on and drive straight onto this airfield. And it's a shame that, as I said, all of this is here. The reason this is here is, I mean, it's probably pretty obvious, but I will explain later on in the video. But it's just a shame, as I said, that this is all here, because this is where the hangars used to be, and there used to be one over there, and there was one literally probably just about here is the edge of one. So as you can see, it's still sloped, and this is what I mean, is that the aircraft taxied sort of up rather than just, you know, going along the taxiway. They taxied up, and this earth is here as well, so they would have taxied up from there. There is a photo I recently saw, actually, of two VC-10s parked in this spot, and I think a 111 over, and a BAC 111, sorry, here. So they would have literally gone from the hangar all the way up here and round and up to where the runway is, just up there. You just make out those gates just there at the tip of my finger. So that's where they would have been. That's where they would have gone, taxied up to, and it's just incredible. But we are going to go down here a little bit and have a look at where the hangar doors used to be. So I've brought you to a part of the airfield where, as I said, this is where aircraft were parked, and we are literally standing face to face with what would have been a hangar door if this place was still open. And just to show you how close, those are rails, and they are the rails for what was the hangar door. And so what we're going to do now is we are literally, if you look at the concrete here, it's not smooth, to say the least, but then we walk through the hangar doors, as I get caught on a fawn, and look, this is the hangar floor. It's still here. If we come over this way to a clearer patch, but this is the hangar floor. Absolutely amazing. It's just, it baffles me as well. It's also mind-boggling that we're standing in what was a hangar, and that, you know, you've got this massive hangar here, and I'm looking around, and yes, I can see them doing what they're doing, but I'm also looking and I'm thinking there's, you know, there must have been all sorts of aircraft that were in various stages of like completion or maintenance or whatever. It's just absolutely breathtaking to picture that. And I'm, at the moment, in my mind, what I'm picturing is a BOAC VC-10 right there, with its nose radar open, the doors all open, it's up on jacks. It's absolutely fascinating, and it just, the imagination's just running wild here. So there was two here. So there was this one, as you can see, it was a fairly sized hangar, but the thing is as well is that this hangar didn't have, so you would have had the end of the hangar facing up that way, but the doors were on the side. So I don't know if you can see them from here, but the rails are over there, and the aircraft would have been, I suppose, pulled out sideways before they went up to the taxiway and conducted their test flights. So what kind of aircraft were test flown here? Well, as I said, this was Vickers' own testing facility. You had aircraft like, you know, from what I've gathered, you had aircraft like the Vickers Viscount flying from here, the Vickers Valiant, the Vanguard or Merchantman, whatever you want to call it. BAC 111s were flown from here, and VC-10s were flown from here. In fact, when it comes to the VC-10, a little bit of a story for you. So the VC-10s were built at Weybridge, literally 20 minutes down the road from here. And because Weybridge's runway was not really that long, they were completed at Weybridge before, and then when they took their first flight, even the prototype VC-10 didn't return to Weybridge. There is a photo of the prototype VC-10 landing here at Wisley, and what would happen with them is that even though Wisley's runway isn't incredibly long, it's long enough for a VC-10 that is fresh from the factory. So as I said, they were completed and built at Weybridge, and they were flown here to Wisley, where they would have further test flights. And not just that, but they would also have their cabins fitted as well for whatever customer that particular aircraft was going to. It's kind of like what Airbus used to do with the 380 when they were in production. They used to assemble the aircraft at Toulouse before eventually flying them off to Hamburg to have the cabins fitted out. So it's very similar to what Airbus did. And again, you know, there is on the internet a whole history of all of the aircraft that were test flown from here. And I think I've just found, yes, I've just found another rail for hangar doors. But yes, so this was sort of like Vickers Hamburg, if you will. You know, this is where all the VC-10s were flown for further test flights and to have their cabins fitted. I'm still mind-boggled that those noisy aircraft used to fly from here. Absolutely amazing. And here we have a little path. I don't know if this sort of doubled as a taxiway, but there are loads of sort of images out there of this particular walkway, taxiway. I don't know if maybe this was used if this may be connected to the roads that we saw over by the security hut. Sorry if I sound out of breath. I'm wearing wellies, and I really do believe I shouldn't have done that because my feet ache. I'm out of, and they're incredibly hard to walk in long term. But I think this may have been. Oh, actually, there's a little cat's eye there, or what was a cat's eye. But I can imagine that maybe this is the road. Maybe this is the road that the workers drove down to get to the hangars here. Maybe there were offices here as well. I haven't seen them from the photos that you can find on the internet of this place, but I'm just assuming that is what it was for. But it's still a fascinating piece of history. And this is what I was saying. I don't know if you can just see it through the trees, but just in there is, I don't know if you can see it, but that is where you used to be able to come in, and you used to be able to just be on this massive concrete where the hangars used to be, and you used to just be able to literally drive your car onto here. Now, if I turn the camera back around, you can see there's a barrier, and you've also seen throughout the video that there has been mounds of earth here as well. Now, that is where that entrance from the A3 comes into play, because when Wisley Airfield closed, everything was taken down. Like, you know, the hangars, the buildings, everything was taken down, and it was just left how it was. The taxiways were left, the where the hangars were, that's been left, the runway's still here, you know. And what people used to do was ride their motorbikes up and down the runway, and sadly there have been a few accidents, hence why those mounds of earth are here and the barriers. It's just to stop people from basically being silly with their vehicles going up and down the runway. obviously I can understand the temptation. You know, you've got a long slab of concrete in the middle of nowhere where you can just go as fast as you want. Understand the temptation, but obviously a few accidents have happened, hence why they're there. But I think I was also told that it's there as well because basically to stop aircraft from flying back into here. There is another cat's eyes. But there you go. So that's why you've got barriers and mounds of earth here at Wisley. I've just been back onto Google whilst I've been walking up here. So the path that you saw us walk up, that you saw me walk up just a minute ago, with the cat's eyes. I googled an overshot of this place, and what we are now standing near, this patch behind me, is where the control tower used to be. So this patch of land right here is where the control tower used to be, and then there was this gap right here, and then literally over here was by the way was the workers' offices. So I think that yes, this was a road, that maybe the road that is up there was connected to maybe a road that came along here, and the workers could drive across the runway and go to where the hangars were, which is over there. But most of them would have come up here. So the offices were here on this little bit of land. You can actually see where they used to be. Like there's a lot of flat land here as well. But there's also this as well. This is where the control tower was. And the more you know. But that is incredible, just to be standing in the presence of what was the control tower. There's so much exploring that you can do up here, guys. I really recommend you guys come up here and have a look around, because it's incredible. It's just an absolutely incredible place. Just to add a little clip to the video, walking up towards the other end of the runway, and I found these yellow lines. If we stand in between them, you can sort of see that they are a bit small for an aircraft to sort of put to fit in between them, but maybe they were for cars or emergency vehicles. I just want to add this little clip into the video, and throughout this entire walk down the runway, and it's a long walk, it's probably does take a good solid 20 minutes to get from runway 28 to the other end, but this is the cleanest part of the runway. As you can see, like the most of it is overgrown, as you can see from all the vegetation over there, that nature has started to come back through. But this little patch here is probably the most undisturbed patch of runway that this has. And whilst we're here, that I'm just literally standing at the end of runway 10, which is where we are going next, and there's going to be a story added to this video as well. But it's absolutely incredible to think that the Valiant of VC-10, you know, all these fantastic aircraft have stood on the end of that runway and then roared down to conduct test flights. Absolutely amazing. So we're now approaching the other end of the runway, runway 10, and there's a yellow line there, and as you can see, if we start walking towards it, there is a taxiway. Now, most of the aircraft, whilst we're here, if you can see just behind me, actually I'll point the camera so I can get a better shot. There, that is where they're building, and just between, there would have been a hangar probably just over there, and then there would have been a hangar over there. And in between those two hangars would have been parking spots for aircraft. Now the taxiway over here is where some of the smaller aircraft, I can imagine, would have taxied onto the runway or taxied off of the runway. Because, well, let me get to the taxiway and I'll show you. So here we are. So as you can see just down here, if I walk over here a little bit, behind this mound of earth, you can just about see the building site down there. And this is a taxiway, ladies and gentlemen. So the aircraft would have taxied up this way, and I can imagine that some of the smaller aircraft would have possibly gone up this taxiway here, so taxied up from down there where the hangars were, taxied up here. Some of the smaller aircraft would have possibly gone up this runway onto runway 10, but the bigger aircraft would have come up this way and onto the very end of the runway, which is literally just behind those bushes. So we have walked the entire length and the entire site of Wisley Airfield, but we're not done yet. So we're going to get onto runway 10, which, as you can see, is literally just there, and this is where tragedy strikes. So here we are at the other end of the runway. We have walked all of that. As you can see, just like runway 28, the markings are still here. We've got the keyboards, we've got the numbers, the 1 and the 0. And as I said, whilst I keep runway 10 in sight, this is where sadly Wisley's history takes a tragic turn. So we go back to 1962, and the BAC 111 is in its test flight campaign, and the prototype 111 took off from this very runway for the last time, sadly, on the 22nd of October 1962. It was piloted by a man called Mike Lithgow, I believe I've pronounced that correctly, and there were 6 other crew on board. Now, they flew from here on that day in 1962 to conduct stall tests, to basically test how the aircraft would behave in a stall, and how to best recover from that stall. Well, sadly, during one of these tests, the aircraft got into an uncontrollable stall, or an unrecoverable stall, and sadly crashed at 10:40 in the morning on that day. Now, sadly, no one survived the crash, and there is a memorial at the crash site where all the names of the people who flew that aircraft are commemorated. That has been there since 2013, but it was here on this runway 10, where Mike Lithgow and sadly 6 other people made their last flight. And that was the loss as well of the BAC 111 prototype, the first ever BAC 111. But new systems were put in place, especially on the 111, and even on newer aircraft today, where if an aircraft is getting close to its stall speed, the controls will shake to say to the pilot, you need to do something right now. And even though, yes, tragedy struck, it was also, and it's been posted on the internet as well, that it's also a major contribution to the flight safety of today. It's very, very sad that for that to happen, 7 people are no longer with us. But as I said, flying has been safer. Flying has been safer because of their sacrifice and their dedication. But that is the sad, tragic story of Wisley, from Wisley in 1962. But to Mike Lithgow and his family, and to those people who sadly lost their lives, thank you so much for the flight safety you have today. Your sacrifice has not been forgotten. So, to give you a quick summary of this place, because this is where I am going to end the video, and here on runway 10, I think it's a fitting end to the video, because obviously, as I said, this is where Mike Lithgow and 6 other people took off for the final time in the BAC 111 prototype. But this, I think, is probably the best place to end this video, here at the end of runway 10. I still can't believe this is here. So, to give you a quick summary, Wisley Airfield was opened in 1942, and it was only open for 30 years, 31 years actually to be precise. It was, throughout its entirety, was a test facility. So we obviously know, as I said earlier, we know why Wisley was opened, you know, what it was for, but what was the downfall? Why was Wisley closed? Why is it not operational today? And the truth is, aircraft like the VC-10 became, basically, aircraft just became too big for Wisley. The aircraft outgrew Wisley Airfield, and there was no room to expand either. Like, if you ever come down here and just have a look around, you'll find that you've literally got the A3 behind us on the camera. I don't know if you can just see through those bushes, but there are vehicles, like, I don't know if you can see, I've lost a bit of light, but there are vehicles passing literally behind those bushes, so very close to a road. But also, you know, there are houses here, and you might have seen it earlier in the video, but there is a farm over there. So they couldn't expand, they couldn't lengthen the runway, and they couldn't do anything with the airfield to basically make it more suitable for larger aircraft. And as I said, there were so many aircraft that were flown from here: Wellington bombers, BAC-111s, VC-10s, Viscounts, Vanguards, Doves, even de Havilland Doves. There's a photo of de Havilland Dove going along the runway here after landing on runway 10 and going down the runway. And that was ultimately one of the reasons why Wisley closed. And it closed in 1974. Flying ceased here in 1973. The last aircraft to actually fly from Wisley in 1973 was, I think it was a Piper Warrior, I think it was, or a PA-28. I'll say, someone correct me on that. But yeah, so basically that was the end of Wisley in 1974. The place was still occupied by, I can imagine then, the British Aircraft Corporation, who habited the site, you know, whilst flying ceased in 73, they habited the site until 74, and that was eventually when they moved out of Wisley, and that was it. Wisley came to an end in 1974. So it's 2024. Let's bring it back to the present day. It's 2024, and what is the future of this place? What has happened with it since that closure date in 1974? Well, in 1974, and after Wisley's closure, everything was taken down. So the control tower was taken down, the offices were taken down, the hangars were taken down, all the buildings were taken down. And I also want to say as well that there are no landing lights either. There's nothing. The only things that are left here at Wisley to sort of say this was an airfield is the runway that you see before me, the taxiways that are left, the massive turnaround pan that's up the other end of at the 28 end, where the hangars were. That's all that is left here at Wisley Airfield to suggest that, you know, this was any kind of an airfield. And it's just remained this way since its closure. Nothing has changed. There was nothing sort of planned. The agreement was, if it closed, was to turn it back over to agriculture use, which it has to a certain extent. As I said, there is a farm somewhere over there somewhere. As you can see, it is getting a bit dark, so probably don't do that because we'll lose some light. But what is the current state of Wisley Airfield in 2024? So the site is owned by a company called Taylor and Wimpey, and what they want to do is basically redevelop the site. They want to build 2,500 homes on the site. And obviously that is going to be sad if that does happen, and I say if because there's a lot of opposition from the people who live around this area to say no, we don't want the new town. You can Google this. If you even put in Wisley Airfield into Google, you will find Taylor and Wimpey, and you will see all the plans that they have for this site. But you know, for now, Wisley is still here. The airfield is still here. You can come down and have a walk around. I'll say I do see a fair few people walking their dogs on this place. I see people walking down up here. When I was up here before, I was speaking to a woman, and she said that this place could possibly be gone by next year. So summer 2025 is, she said, this will probably all be gone. So I urge anyone who's watching this video, if you look at this place and think, if you watch this video and say, I want to go have a look at that, please do. There is, if you put into Google Maps Wisley Airfield, there's a little car park. I can't remember what it's called, but basically you can park in that car park, and the airfield is literally like a 5-minute walk from that car park. So that is the story of Wisley Airfield. I'm sorry that, you know, there's probably not a lot to it. As I said, this place had a very short history of just 31 years. Opened in 1942, closed in 1974. But it was obviously during a time when the British aviation industry, I mean, was winding down a lot. You know, we used to have so many manufacturers that suddenly just disappeared off the face of the earth. And now we have BAE Systems, but we don't really produce many aircraft, if any aircraft at all these days. I know you produce the Typhoon and the Hawk, and Tempest is due, but apart from that, we don't really produce anything. And Wisley is just a small part in British aviation history. So as I said, guys, if you want to come have a look at this place, I urge you do. It's a fascinating walk, fascinating place, and you do get that sense of history here. And I do want to say as well that it's fascinating. As I said, it's fascinating knowing what was going on here, the aircraft that used to fly from here, and it's all gone quiet. You know, the noise that was here, everything, like, this place was a hive of activity, and it's fallen silent. It's eerie and sad. But guys, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. This is my first video on a former airfield. I plan on doing a few more. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. It means a lot. I also have an Instagram and a Facebook page, the same as my YouTube channel, Just Plain Nuts. I will attach links in the description, but as I said, for now, it's Just Plain Nuts signing off. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for the next one. So again, from me, Just Plain Nuts, and Wisley Airfield, it's goodbye.